convince you. And if somebody chooses not to believe in something or not to embrace something, there's not much you can do about that, right? There's not much you can do about that. But there's one thing that no one on the planet Earth can ever argue with you about. You know what it is? Your story. Right?
Yes.
Nobody can argue with what you have experienced in your life. So if I said to this young man right here, you know, I was lost and alone, and I sensed God's love for me, and I reached out and I accepted it for myself, and I feel His Spirit in me, and He charges me every day and walks with me through my life. This guy can't go to me. No, he doesn't. No, you didn't ever feel that. Right? He can't do that because it's my experience. It's my own personal story. So while you can argue back and forth with somebody all day long about the merits, right, of such and such being accurate or such and such being true or not true, nobody can argue with you about your own experience. So I want to share with you my experience, okay? I hope that's all right with you guys.
Yeah.
I've done this at some other conventions, so if you happen to have caught it online, I'll try to make it interesting here. It may surprise you, or may not surprise you probably, to know that I was born in church. I grew up in church. My grandfather, Pastor Robert Nitz, was the pastor of the Church of the Open Door in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. I'm talking dinky town. Like, the attendance of acen is probably greater than the town I was born in, okay? And my grandfather was one of the most wonderful men I ever knew. My dad left when I was very young, as if you were in the panel the other day. My dad left when I was 9, and my grandfather very much became like a father figure to me. And he was one of the greatest men I've ever known. An amazing man. And he was so committed and driven to be the pastor of this little church in this little town. He poured his heart and his life into that congregation of people. Well, I was one of them. I grew up in it. I mean, you guys don't have any idea how deeply. I mean, my mom probably went into labor in the choir loft. I mean, we were there all the time. My mom played the piano for the church. My dad was, while he was there, was like an elder, like a deacon in the church. My grandfather was the pastor. We were there all the time. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. For those of you churchy people in here, you know what I'm talking about, midweek service. And then, you know, and then my church had like Thursday night, like outreach. So people would come together at the church and we would go out to the malls or the shopping centers or whatever and pass out literature and invite people to come, stuff like that. And then the next thing you know, it's Sunday morning again, right? So I was there an awful lot. I was one of those bratty pastor's kids who the Sunday school teachers hated because I knew more about the Bible than they did. You know those kids. If you guys go to church or maybe even in your schools, there are people that, you know, they're real kind of, oh yeah, I know that, I memorized that. You know, and I was one of those little bratty kids who like had blue ribbons and little trophies for all of the Bible memorization contests that I won. I memorized hundreds of verses out of the King James. So now you know we're talking serious business, because that's some fancy language.
Yeah.
And then in about oh man, I'm not going to tell you that. That'll date me. Then at some point in time, my grandfather decided to start a Christian school in our church, the Open Door Christian Academy. Guess who was student number 1? His grandson, Victor. So suddenly, I'm in my little white shirt, tie, clean cut little boy, going to church, and by the way, or going to school, and by the way, the Christian school was in the church, right? It was in the building. Some of you even know what I'm talking about there. It was literally downstairs in all of the classrooms is where the school resided. Now, do you know what that means now? That means that I was in church in that building Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all day for school, Wednesday night for midweek service, Thursday all day for school, Thursday night for outreach, Friday all day for school, Saturday there's usually a youth event, and then we're back to Sunday. I probably should have just taken a sleeping bag to the church and just stayed there because it would have saved a lot of money in gas. I was there all the time, right? All the time. One afternoon, on Wednesdays, by the way, we would have a chapel service at the school, at the academy. And it would, different people would speak, maybe the youth minister, maybe my grandfather, maybe one of the teachers. But on this particular day, the guy that was speaking was the youth minister, John Ferguson. John Ferguson spoke, and I'm going to read you the passage that he spoke on that day. And I'm going to do something that I think is kind of fun. I'm going to read from the King James Version, and then I'm going to read it from another version that I absolutely adore called The Message. It's a very contemporary translation, so you can see how different it's written, but it says the same thing, but it's just very impactful. It's much more like we communicate. You ready? I'm going to read this to you, so I want you to take it in. Oh, you got an extension for me. Look at you. Time. Excellent. Thank you, sir. Look at me. I'm coming to get you, Ed. I can come all the way. I may even get all the way back to the back with the cat back there. All right, let me read this passage to you, okay? You ready? This is the King James. Matthew. This is the Gospel of Matthew, and it starts with verse 21, chapter 7, verse 21. You ready? Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Here comes the part that really grabbed me. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? Have we not cast out devils in thy name, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me. Now, let me read it in the Message. Ready? You heard that, right? You heard what I just read. Now, listen to it in a contemporary version. Knowing the correct password, saying master, master, for instance, isn't going to get you anywhere. What is required is serious obedience, doing what my Father wills. I can see it now at the final judgment. Thousands strutting up to me saying, Master, we preached the message. We bashed the demons. Our God-sponsored projects had everyone talking. And do you know what I'm going to say? You missed the boat. All you did was use me to make yourselves important. You don't impress me one bit. You're out of here. Yikes, right? Oh, that's heavy. You hear the difference, right? The King James is like, oh, flowery and in thy name prophesy, blah, 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 right? And then, boom. The way we talk, you kind of translate it. It's like, oh, man, that's heavy. Well, at 13 years old, when John Ferguson read that passage, he then went on to talk about how sad it was going to be the day that thousands of people stood before God who grew up in church, who knew all the Bible verses, who went to Christian schools, who dressed nice and learned, who memorized everything. How sad it was going to be when those people stood before God and he said to them, I'm sorry, you never really had a relationship with me. You're just doing all the outward stuff. You're just kind of floating along, like you just thought you were in the club, because you went to Christian school. You thought you were somehow cool because your grandfather was a pastor. You thought you were fine because you memorized Bible verses. That's all on the outside. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not internal. And I was sitting there at 13 years old thinking, wow, that's kind of heavy. Sounds like he's talking to me a little bit.
Mm.
I mean, I always thought I was cool. I always thought I was in the club, right? I'm in the Christian club, right? I have to be, right? My grandfather's the pastor of the church, for crying out loud. My mom plays the piano. I sing in church. I stand right up on that stage and sing Christian songs. I've got blue ribbons all over my wall for memorizing Bible verses. Look how short my hair is. I wear a tie to school. Surely I'm in the club.
Mm.
And when he read that passage, I thought to myself, oh no. And I realized that I had never for myself personally asked God to come and live with me. Did you notice I didn't say Catholic? Did you notice I didn't say Baptist? Did you notice I didn't say Presbyterian, Methodist, Episcopalian, Lutheran, blah, 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 blah? Those are all words that guys made up. That's not God, okay? God's interested in what? Relationship with you. Not what you call